I think that meditation is like the key.
It
No
is
question.
meditation is the key,
Hmm.
and also you've already read through the second chapter, which is the work on shadow.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
also the key. This is another.
Can you say more about it? What
Sure.
in a few words? Yeah.
There's a conversation between Bill Harris, who is the founder of Centerpoint, the HoloSync meditation CDs, between Bill Harris and Ken Wilber.
Hmm.
And Bill asks Ken, he says, Ken, why do we fall out of the now? Okay, why do we fall out of
Hmm.
presence?
Hmm.
So the story I always tell is, in the morning you have your beautiful meditation,
Hmm.
and then you leave your meditation and you feel great and the world is clear and you have all these great intentions, etc. And then all of a sudden somebody says something,
Hmm.
and they push your button, and all of a sudden the now kind of goes out the door. You kind of lose presence and you're lost in a particular emotional state. So this is often a reflection, as Ken said, of shadow, of simply not being aware that a significant amount of your subjective,
Hmm.
your own emotional states are a reflection of aspects of yourself that you have denied
Hmm.
or tried to bury. Now, the shadow contains both good and bad aspects. It contains, let's say, anger, maybe jealousy, frustration, anxiety, perhaps. Let's just name a few. But it also contains potential and big
Hmm.
mind and authentic joy and bliss, right? These can also be in shadow. All of these voices can be in shadow. So when you sit and meditate, you go beyond the body, you
Hmm.
go beyond
Right.
the emotions, you go beyond the mind.
Hmm.
Interestingly enough, you also go beyond shadow.
Hmm.
You drop the whole thing, right? I'm just going to the ground of being, I'm gone.
Hmm.
Okay. This is why meditation doesn't heal shadow. This is why you can be a very, very experienced meditator but still have significant emotional problems or have significantly disturbed relationships.
Hmm.
Now, you can see how the unhealthy ego is really in love with somebody who doesn't embrace their own shadow, because there's a quite a juicy supply of rich emotional states there
Hmm.
that can merge and really make a mess out of your relationships. So I think, it might be a really good suggestion for people who are listening, is that in relationships is to even to begin to consider the possibility that 90% of the emotions that you experience in
Hmm.
relationships, and this may even apply with you and your children, 90% of those emotions have nothing to do with the other person. It's
Hmm.
all has to do with you. As Ken Wilber says, it's not a matter of us playing with the world. It's a matter of us playing with ourselves.
Hmm.
So again, this really shifts the ground when you're interacting in a relationship, and especially when you're beginning to awaken to unhealthy ego, and you're paying attention to the arising of emotions, especially in these complicated, long-term, intimate relationships.
Hmm.
When you feel these emotions arising, you can say, this is a gift. This person's giving me a gift. They're giving me an insight into myself, into my own shadow, into an aspect of myself that I have denied. And
Hmm.
by simply owning that shadow, and I base part of this chapter on Ken Wilber's work in the Integral Institute.
Hmm.
There's a very simple routine that you can use to reintegrate these shadows back into the self, into the Freudian ego. So this is another really, really important tool that we can use. So first one will be meditation, and then the second one would be owning the emotional states.
And the key for transformation is to be rooted in the empty ground of all being. It is really the key for transformation, because when you go from there, everything becomes clearer and and possible actually.
Impossible.
Yeah, very possible.
That's the important thing, right?
Yeah.
That's the important thing, and you can see why. right? From let's come from a very, let's say, logical perspective. You can see why in a relationship, let's say it's an intimate relationship, and I
Mm-hmm.
can speak from my own experience
Mm-hmm.
here
Okay.
with my wife. When you have two people who have significant meditation practice, and
Mm-hmm.
also two people who have significant shadow work, and also two people who have a significant interest in let's say expressing awakened compassion for the biggest possible reasons. Whenever there's a disturbance
Mm-hmm.
in the grounded being, right on
Mm-hmm.
top of the grounded being, or in the
Mm-hmm.
subjective state, whenever there's a disturbance, it's immediately recognized.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You only have to ask two questions. One, is it my shadow? Two, is it a manifestation of unhealthy ego? You just
Mm-hmm.
have to ask those two questions.
True.
Then you respond.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you ask those two questions for long enough, right? For let's say 6 months or a year or 3 months or a year, however long it takes you, the process becomes automated.